So do you want me to go ahead?
Hello, yes, you can.
Yes. Okay, great, great, great. Well, I'm in Pretoria in South Africa this time. So hello all the way from Gauteng, Pretoria. It's Elephants in the Room again with Sunil, Osman, and Romany Thresher. And we are live right now. I've just seen the live pop up on my phone. I'm using this magical device, the phone, which we like to throw away sometimes. But it is Elephants in the Room, where we first want to say thank you very much to everybody that's watched our video last week. We're trying a different medium this week. We'd like to know your feedback, your comments, and your thoughts, and also on everything that we are speaking about as well. And this week, because last week I started with my elephant in the room, and we're starting with Romany. Romany, how are you?
Well, I'm good, thank you. And yes, lots of tech things, which is obviously very different to Facebook Live, going back to Hangouts. But Hangouts seem to have a lot more features than what Facebook Live can offer us right now. So that is it. My elephant in the room for this week, well, it really was disturbing. And I'm going to share the image so that you can relate to what I'm speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
Which is this. Hold on. Oh gosh,
That's
I
you.
shared the wrong one. So we're gonna have to get used to that one for the moment.
Yes.
Let's have a look here.
Everybody should know that
This.
we don't script any of this. We are live as can be.
So this is what got me this week, and I
Whoa.
looked at this, and I looked at this, and I just felt so nauseated and disgusted. And my husband and I love to talk openly about lots of different things and have topics about women and men and what we think about. And to normally, I couldn't even bring myself to show my husband this because it was just too disgusting to me for words. Which brings me on a topic of sexualization of women. And I was reading an article, which
Yes.
is where young girls are actually really quite traumatized by sex in terms of how it is and the pressure it is today. And, there was these were the words of Lucy, who basically wants education on sex for both boys and girls. And basically, what they were saying is that boys have become so obsessed with sex and that it's become quite hectic that girls don't actually know what to do. And there you're reading sexual bullying and harassment are part of daily life for girls, many girls growing up as part of the digital generation. And that's just not alone singular to the what do you call it, to the young generation. It's actually for
Yes.
worldwide. I mean, in my research, I've read that 1 in 3 women are either raped or abused within their lifetime, which is quite a serious thing. And did you know that at least 64% of women cannot even tell you, even mention the word vagina, cannot even talk about it openly, cannot even speak about it openly, because women in general are just kind of like being put down. We get told that we can't do anything, that sex is such a shameful thing. We are told that we are inferior as people. And so there's this whole thing that's coming up where women are sexually objectified, treated as sex objects, especially in the younger generation, where apparently boys are, for example, watching a lot of pornography online, and it's obviously very perverse. And from my understanding, it's a lot of things where women have to submit and do things. And so there's a lot of things where information, I mean, women in general, I'm quite shocked that women in general don't enjoy sex.
Yeah.
So
No.
carry on.
Yeah. No. Go for it. Go for it.
We lost you there for a
Okay.
moment.
Now, and I was saying I saw the in the screenshot that you brought up there, or on the screen that you brought, they were saying how pornography is influencing a lot of the sexual behavior of boys and girls. And yes, I mean obviously that has an influence. And from a man's point of view, I can what, forget all bro codes out there. It's absolutely true, because there are lots of those, and that's why you hear lines like men want you know a woman on the street and a freak in the bed.
Well, you know, this is the thing, you know. I mean, I think it's more of a something in the kitchen and what, you know, and all that. And this is the thing, you know. Women are told that sex is bad. We are told that sex is dirty. We are told that you cannot be a whore, that you have to be this virgin, you have to be. So you can imagine the messages that are being sent to you from such a young age to how to treat your body and to treat yourself. I mean, this one lady, she was working at working, for example, in an industry for 25 years as a psychologist, and it's actually scary to think that women can't even say the word vagina. I mean, yeah, issues related to sex are not talked about enough, even with a healthcare provider. So let's just start by saying that 65% of women are embarrassed to say the word vagina, and 45% of women never talk about their vaginas with anyone, not even their doctors. And it's because it's consistently being made shameful. It's consistently being told to us that it's, so how do you get that happy medium? Because now you get these boys who are sexually obsessed coming out at a certain age, looking at this pornography, taking this as their cue as how to treat women in bed. And in the other article, where girls as young as in the 8th grade, basically girls are being trained that it's for his gratification, that I'm there just for his personal pleasure, that I'm just there for the man, and so they don't enjoy sex. They do things that they don't actually like doing, and so there's this big you know, disconnect between what actually the relationship involved with that is, and these conversations are never, don't always happen in a way that it should at home, and somehow this needs to be addressed, because it's not just about, because you know, there's something about confidence with women, that from an early age you get told. I mean, for me it started at the age of 8. I can tell you now, the messages everywhere in my life, from church to, from religion to schooling to media, everywhere, even in my social circles, the men got always the preference, you know, men. It's, and so, you know, that needs to change. And you know, I sat the other day thinking to myself, how different would the world be if everybody was just born as equal? Like, you know, we are born equal, but once we enter the world, there's this inequality that comes up. What would the world be like if we were all treated equal?
Yeah. Now, I mean, from something that you said that was quite important that hit home for me was actually the word home that you spoke about. You know that there's such a there's a word I'm looking for. There's a feeling around speaking about sex and love making, or even condom usage, that they don't go to the home. And you said that you heard about all these things when you were 8. You were exposed to media and everything. And yes, people get exposed from a very young age. I mean, I'm very lucky in that both my parents, my mom and my dad, they spoke very openly about sex, and so it gave me a very different opinion out of how and what sex is all about. So, you know, it's about education as well, and about getting people aware of what sex is all about, so that they don't get influenced just by the pornography or just by the media. So they have previous defined socialization around what sex is, so that the women are not treated like they are, and the men don't feel they have to treat the woman that way. And that comes down to parenting.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
It definitely does, and it also comes down to, like you say, we feel so uncomfortable talking about it. I mean, as we started the show, I could feel I was shaking. I mean, even in myself, I can tell you now that it's very difficult for me to speak about it. It's one of the hardest things, and that's purely because of social conditioning. You know, we are taught not to speak about it, and you know, and another thing is we need to also encourage each other to change attitudes. In other words, what are you sharing? What are you talking about? What jokes are you tolerating? Like, I'm going to give you an example now. As a young girl, I would remember people having, like, going to social parties with my parents or going into the office somewhere, and you know, I'd start hearing these jokes, and it's like derogatory towards women. And how does that make me feel in that moment? And that's the thing. It's like, I remember at high school watching guys look at the, I think in those days, you know, you had the scope and I don't know, the scope, I think, I
With the
can't remember, but they
stars,
were
with the
looking at,
stars over the nipples.
Yes, they were looking at these magazines. And I've just read it recently in one of the articles, where you don't realize the impact of what your actions is doing to another person. So here these boys are looking at these porn magazines, and they're making jokes, and they're comparing, and and they start telling. And in today, what's happening today is girls are being asked to share their naked bodies on online to their boyfriends, and then they go and share it with their friends. And this is something that's just, we've got to think about that, those feelings that you're actually sending out to the person, if that makes sense, because in that
Yeah.
moment, while that those guys were making jokes and fun and all that, as a girl sitting there 14 years old, I'm feeling humiliated, I'm feeling disgusted, I'm feeling embarrassed to be a woman, I'm feeling like, why am I here? Sort of, do you see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
we have to be very careful about what we share and speak about and talk about in front of public and people and stuff like that, because it's those kind of messages that sends a bigger message out to other people. Oh yes, I can treat a woman like this because look, I can look at all the naked bodies on, that sort of thing. Oh, let me catcall the girl down the road because hey, she's just an object. You know what I'm saying? And that's how it all starts, and people do start feeling that way.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely. I mean, I agree with you to quite a large extent. And then, as I'm sitting here listening to you speak about your elephants in the room, um, I think about how I can defend the man's race around this, and unfortunately,
well,
there's not much I can actually do. But you must remember that there are men out there that go through the same thing. Yes, there's scope. There are male and female adult magazines out there, but the exposure of women is a much larger extent than what the men have to go through. I mean,
and there
sitting here,
weren't really men magazines out that often. It only in recent years. It wasn't so much. There weren't really men's magazines out. Well, I don't know. When you're talking about the same type of whatever we're talking about, it just wasn't. It's not on the same level. It's
that,
just
yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's a different level, so I can't justify it really by saying, "Oh, but for men, it's exactly the same thing," because it's not.
no, it's not. And you also said something about the magazines earlier on, which also grabbed my attention, about, you see, that's the thing. I was sitting there thinking, how do we make it? Because it's kind of a responsibility on both to somehow make that change. What can men do to take responsibility? It's like the rape thing. It always falls on women. Oh, she dressed like this. Oh, she's an alcoholic, or she mustn't go out drinking. Why do we make it always the woman's problem? When are we going to come to a point where men take responsibility for their actions and for their behavior and for their part in this role? And it's almost like we are raised in this society where, yes, men are supposed to be responsible for the family, but in the younger ages, it's like men can go out on adventures and men can do this and that, and then don't seem to be taught that limitation of taking responsibility for their actions. Whereas girls from an early age, I mean, I was walking down the road the other day and it just dawned on me, from an early age, we're already freaking making babies. We get girls to nurture, to feed, to look after, and from a young age, we're already socially conditioned into, hello, we are raising babies sort of thing,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that is where the problem comes down. And as I said earlier, a lot of it I feel comes down to the parenting and the household and how the children are brought up. Because if we have a girl who gets a little doll who's a baby, and you get a boy who gets a doll who's a baby, and they both grow up raising this baby together, it's a different situation. Whereas
It
what's been
would.
happening is that just the girls are getting that. I mean, if you look at you get a lot of people who are proud. So you get a little boy who wants to dress up as a little girl, and then he gets shouted and says, "That's not what boys do." Meanwhile, he's exploring, he's learning about those things. If the little boy grabs a little baby that's one of those babies with a baby inside the stomach, he gets said, "No, that's what mommies do only." So from a very early age, they're being brainwashed, they're being conditioned to be what society has defined as what a
Yeah.
man and a woman should be.
No, I agree. I agree completely. And it really has to start in the home. And women have probably the most influence. I don't like making it the woman's responsibility, but because we definitely do have the most influence in the household in terms of kids and rearing, and we need to be making those changes. Why do boys always? I was watching a show, events with the word events in it, not to be seen or something. And in this program, there's these two little kids, about 10 or 12 years old, and the one girl is always carrying the baby sister. You will never see in throughout the whole show, she's always carrying the baby. The little boy never takes on the baby, never walks around with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like a not shared responsibility. So yes, that's my elephant in the room for this week.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. It's good to get these kind of topics out, because that's part of the reason Roman and I are doing this and why it's called Elephants in the Room, is because we speak about the topics that people don't want to speak about, or they just brush it aside. And I think lots of what we've spoken about in the past couple of weeks, people just brush them aside, but it needs to be spoken about. We'd love to hear your comments. Please share this video as well and give us some feedback too, and what you think of the new Hangouts that we are using. And without any technical glitches, I'm sure we will be back next week, Friday at 2 p.m. in South Africa. And what time is it in the UK?
I can't tell you right now. I'm 2 hours behind. Because I'm on South African time on my laptop. So I think it's 1 o'clock.
All right.
I think it's 1 o'clock.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank you, Romany, for everything as well, and for sharing your elephant in the room. Until next week, have a fantastic weekend.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.